Hi, my name's Tom, and today I'm going to show you guys how to use Logic Pro's Quick Sampler. So, starting off, just like any MIDI controlled software in Logic, you would have to start a new software instrument, track right here, and then you would go to where you change instruments right over here. And so Logic has two sampler options. So there's the quick sampler, which takes one single sample. You can't use like multiple audio files, it's just one. And then there's the multi-sampler, which you can map multiple samples into one instrument, but I'll cover that later. So first, let's open a quick sampler track. And then, so to get started with the quick sampler, you have multiple options to start off. So we could go to Logic's loops and look for a random drum loop. So let's say I wanted to use this drum loop. So I would just drag it over here. And so quick sampler has two options, original and optimized. So original is just going to drop the sample as is into the sampler without cutting off any audio. And then optimize is going to cut off the kind of quiet regions in your audio. So if you have any tails, it's just going to splice those off. Optimize some loudness levels. But if you just want the complete audio track as is and to just edit all yourself, you can just put it in as original. So here we have, and since it's a loop, it's already optimized for us. So we have one of Logic's loops in the sampler. And so first off, I'm going to start with the classic mode. And so the classic mode is just going to do exactly what you expect. It's going to play back a sample at a specific pitch based on where you played on the keyboard. However, as you might be able to tell, the pitch is speeding up. It's not just going up in pitch, it's also speeding up. So this one's a little faster. Here it's going to be a little slower. If we go down this octave, it's going to be a little slower. And if you want the audio file to just follow the same tempo the whole time, like not speed up or go down in tempo, just keep the same speed, like no matter what pitch you're playing, you would just press on this flex key right here. And now it's going to play at the same speed. And if you wanted, you could tweak the speed a little bit, so you can have it go in half time. Or you can have it go twice as fast. And over here, we have options for playing backwards, forwards. So if I wanted to reverse this sample, and then you can also loop certain regions. So let's say I wanted the sample to go up to here. And then, so as you can see, once I click on the sample actually, right here, so we get all these little markers down here. So this just tells you when the sample is starting, where it ends, how long it is, and your fades. So if I increase the fade right here, as you can see, it'll increase on the right. And then if you just click out, it'll come back to all these normal options. So let's say we wanted a loop that alternates and kind of goes back and forth inside of a loop. So we would have this sample. Let's add some fades. So as you can see, it's playing within the loop. And if you wanted, you could have no loop, you could have it going forward. So it's going to play this entire section. Let's bring it back to normal speed. You can have it going forward. it. So if you wanted the loop to maybe be back here and kind of go backwards, or if you wanted it to go forward and backwards, as I said before, so you can have it up here, alternate. And then no loops, just get rid of the loop completely. And if you did want to just take a section of the audio, you could add some fades so that, you know, you don't get any like beeps. So like if I take this section over here, just kind of cut it out like that and bring it back to forward. Just so that there's no kind of frequencies that bounce out, you could always add a fade in and a fade out. Optimizing actually puts the root key at the key of the track. So as you can see, for example, this is an E. If I brought this in and put in optimized, the root key is going to be E2. So now every E is going to be an octave. So that's the basic tools of the classic sampler. We have some other options here. This is like the if you wanted an envelope, you could control the envelope, although it works a little bit better in the other modes. So let's move on to one shot. So one shot is just, you play it, and it's gonna play the whole thing. So I play one, it's just gonna keep playing until the end. So this is like if you wanted to put in, if you were doing a live performance and you wanted to drop like a drum loop in your track, you would just basically press your keyboard or your drum machine and just kind of drop an audio track. But if you were kind of doing this through Logic, I would recommend that you actually kind of drop in the audio tracks so that you can edit them later. So this is like more for live performance. And you could do the same thing here that you did in the classic version. So you can go backwards, forwards. But this one's a lot less. There's a lot less options here since it's just playing the entire track. And then for our final mode, we have slice. So slice cuts up your audio file based on, so you can actually choose, but there's the first option, which is transients. So as you can see, Logic cut up the sample for me into little pieces. So C1 would be right here. So if I went down with it, that'd be C1, this would be D. And as you can see, every key is going to be a different piece of the sample. And so transients basically are like the loudness points in your, so if you wanted to zoom in, you can zoom in right here and check out where it's cutting these up. But basically transients are the loudness points of your track. And so you could even cut up based on beat division. So let's say every, what is this? Every eighth note, right? Or you could do every quarter note, every third of the measure, and then just keep, cutting down in divisions. So if I wanted to have like the entire thing cut out based on these eighth notes, I would just have kind of that, and then you can do equal divisions where it's just going to divide them equally up rather than based on beats like this. So equal divisions here, it's just going to kind of equally splice them out throughout, like without looking at any of the audio files. It's just going to, based on the time, it's going to just cut them equally apart from each other. And then we have manual. And manual is where you can actually, you have the option to kind of make your own splices here. So let's say I wanted to splice this right here. Now I have the option to do that. Maybe I wanted this to be the second one, this one. So now I can just kind of like alternate between these. And you can just cut up any piece of audio into your own personal splices. If you know your samples really well, the samples that you're using, you can edit them, add your own splices, cut them up based on how you want to play it, basically. And so the options we have here are where you want the start key to be, where you want the splices to start at. And then we also have the amplitude option here. So if you wanted to have a gate, now instead of just playing like, so beforehand, if I played it, it would just play out the whole splice. With gate, it only plays for as long as I hold it based on this ADSR right here. So let's say I take one of these bigger ones. So there's a little bit of fade out, but if I wanted it to just cut right when I start playing, so that's also an option. You can tweak that around as much as you need. And that's about it for the options within the Quick Sampler. The rest of these are just kind of specific things. So if you wanted to change the pitch, or if you wanted to have a filter, but I would recommend if you're just using the sampler, just to stick to the 3 options here and to just play around with that, because I feel like that's going to be of enough use, especially with the slicing tool. That one is going to be very useful if you're trying to cut up a piece of audio and kind of create your own sampler or drum machine. So here, for example, I could take this drum track right here, the Amen Break, a really famous sample, put it into this optimized mode, and just slice it up. So let's say I want this to be the first sample, and then I take this is the second sample, and then right here I have the third one. And so like you could make these as long or as short as you want to. So for example, if I want this to just be its own, this one right here to just have its own small little section, I can do that. Just tweak it however you like. So now we can just take this vocal sample, and maybe I just want to take this one specific section of the sample and just kind of have it playing back. I still really, really love you. Right? And again, I can turn on flex if I don't want it to slow down, or if I want it to speed up at a higher pitch. And then I can also, cut up vocal samples if you want to do that, some vocal chopping. So let's say I take this one, put it into optimized, and then slice it. And then I can just kind of cut it up right here. And you can kind of just do, whatever you feel, whatever kind of comes to mind with whatever vocal samples you have. And that's the basics around the Quick Sampler. So for the regular sampler, it actually is a little bit more complicated. So actually, Logic's it's the sampler's mainly used to kind of recreate instruments in Logic. So if you wanted to have your own piano, let's say you took multiple audio samples from a real piano that you have at home or a grand piano that you recorded in the studio, and then you just kind of took the different pitches and put them in a sampler. That's what Logic Sampler's made for. So let's say I have this piano right here. So if you so on some of these tracks, the sampler is present actually, and you can like check out what samples it's using, especially like for the live instruments. So as you can see, sampler, I can go into this and check out the mapping. And as you can see, they mapped out the different samples of the piano to every key on your MIDI instrument. And there's all these extra options here. So the sustain, all these pedals, the different types of so maybe you recorded one version of the piano with a sustain pedal on, maybe you recorded one version without, maybe you mixed them. So you can kind of have like those different layers. And then let's start our own sampler. So I'm gonna go here, create a track. And so the sampler has multiple options here. Like, it's a lot more complicated than the quick sampler, because the quick sampler is really meant to kind of drop an audio track in, cut it up, edit it, kind of turn it into its own sample, versus the sampler, which is made to kind of like create your own instrument. So let's say I take like this section here, and I just really just cut it down. Then I just drop it in and put it on the C1. And now C1 is going to be that drum hit right there. And then, you could do the same thing that you did with the splicer, except you would have to edit your own audio. So kind of go into the audio file, maybe add some fades, just chop up the audio, and then lay it out on the keyboard on whatever key you want it on. And you could just do this with multiple different instruments, different audio pieces of audio. And you do have all these other options, but I would recommend starting off with sampling to just play around with putting samples on a MIDI map and just seeing where you want your sounds to go and how you want to cut it up before you kind of move on to the more complicated areas of sampling. So these are the basics of Logic Pro sampling. There is a lot more that goes into it than just dragging these audio files or loops into the sampler, but I would say starting off just simple and easy, play around with your samples, get some audio files together, throw them into a sampler, cut them up, and have fun with it. So yeah, hopefully you guys learn a lot about samples and sampling in Logic today.